Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are doing some birthday picks from our good friend Brandon. So, Brandon, why don't you tell us what movie you brought to the table this week?
Well, I brought a movie that is going to kind of serve a dual purpose. Wet Hot American Summer. This is a film directed by David Wain. And it was in 2001. This is a camp comedy about the last day of summer camp in 1981. You got all the counselors and the kids got to complete their unfinished business in this last day. All right, so we've had it was quite a fun watch for me, but let's see how you all enjoyed it. Let's start with you, Tammy. Was this your first time watching Wet Hot American Summer?
Yes, it was. I guess it was okay. It just David said it good when I talked to him about it. That some of the comedy in it seemed forced instead of just like naturally, and some of it I thought was just like really. It was like, really? Okay. Uh, next scene. But it was all right. I mean, I've seen a lot better and I've seen a lot worse. So, you know, I didn't mind watching it. It just there was definitely a lot of scenes that I was just like, did they really do that? Did they really go there? So to me, it was like that kind of humor. Like you were like, okay, what's next?
A lot of actors that are in this that I never would have expected.
Yeah.
I know David and I were talking about that too. I mean, he recognized a few and I recognized one. So,
Only one?
well, yeah. After he told me about him, then I recognized. Yeah, then I recognized two.
Yeah,
So
all right.
Well, what about
I
you? Oh,
I
sorry. Go ahead.
recognized the little blonde that would put the talent show together. She was in Charlie and
Mhm.
the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah,
So,
And then he told me that the one dude I watch Law and Order SVU, and he said that was Stapler, and I'm like, "Huh, what?"
there's a lot that people weren't really that people would have had time recognizing. David Hyde Pierce was the easy one, in my opinion.
well,
But
he and Janine Garofalo was
yeah,
also really big on the indie circuit at the time. But
but
yeah,
Paul Rudd. You've got Bradley Cooper of all people.
it's like one of his first, if not his first role.
Yeah,
Um,
Elizabeth Banks.
mhm.
I'm not sure what her name is. The one that put the show together, the little blonde.
That was Amy Poehler.
Amy
What did she have
Poehler.
to do with Charlie's Chocolate Factory? Was she in
She
that?
was the mother of the little girl that.
Oh, was she? Was she? I'd
Yeah,
forgotten that.
yeah, she was the mother of the little girl that turned into, I believe, a blueberry.
Yeah, I was gonna say she would have been Violet's mother if she was anyone's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah, a lot of names, and you look, it's like, oh, that's them, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was like it was okay. It was funny. So, like I said, some of it was just it was unexpected humor, I guess.
A good way to definitely explain it. Oh, was that
Yeah, that's it for now.
all right? Well, how
no,
about you?
Missy Pyle is Violet's mother.
Well, I've seen that lady before. I don't know.
Well,
What
Amy Poehler was a fixture for a while on SNL. She's the star of Parks and Recreation, and she's best buds with Tina Fey, and they've done a whole bunch of stuff together. So you've seen her around, whether you knew it or not. But
maybe that's what. But she
yeah,
to me she looked like the lady that was on.
yeah, I can see it.
Huh? So, what about you, Dave? Is this your very first time watching Wet Hot American Summer?
No, it's not. And I believe Tammy and I had actually watched it once before, but it has been a while. And I know I picked it up for my collection, but I haven't really watched it a whole lot. And I did not watch it when I was younger. Now, if I was younger, maybe I might like the comedy or in it. I do like some of the characters, but I don't know if it's maybe a time frame that I would have liked this in, but it's not one of those comedies where I can laugh at it like at all right now. Maybe it's just a mood that you have to be in, but I did enjoy seeing a younger Paul Rudd before he became Ant-Man, be a jackass. I enjoy seeing Niles Crane show up in places that you don't expect. And because I'm into the Big Bang Theory, I enjoy that that due to cause the wind in the very end. But and I do enjoy seeing the conversation between a vegetable soup can and Stabler. So yeah, but there are, I guess, things that I take from it, and it's not a good movie. It's not a masterpiece, but it was entertaining. So.
Very good descriptor as well. See, we're getting such good descriptors that feel accurate to the film here. Y'all good, Dave?
Yeah, I'm good. I was being
All
nice.
right. And Jake, is this your first time seeing the movie?
Oh no, not at all. It's my first time seeing it in a pretty good while. And I think last time I saw it, well, it's been a good while. And like I said, the last time I saw it might have been the first time that I was like, holy crap, Bradley Cooper's in this. And I had totally forgotten that until I saw it again. And I always forget how many people are in this. Like when I saw it, I was a big fan of Frasier. So David Hyde Pierce, obviously I was going to see it because, Niles was in it. And again, Janine Garofalo was huge on the indie circuit. She was doing lots of movies. This came out a couple years after Mystery Men, and among other things. But that was one where apparently this was filmed at a summer camp that Hank Azaria had been to. And when she saw his name on a bunk, she called him and like actually gives him a shout out during the movie because of that. But it was it's kind of funny. It would have been great if they got him in for a cameo, but you got all these people that I didn't know from anything back then. That now, I recognized Molly Shannon from SNL. I recognized Amy Poehler probably from SNL. Now I'm a big fan of Parks and Rec, so I get more of it from there. Elizabeth Banks has become a huge name since then. It's actually real funny because now she's directing all these kind of sort of girl power kind of movies, and in this one she basically plays the one of the two residence slots, really. So it's kind of fun it's really fun as a time capsule film. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And again, when I first saw it, I was in college and I was looking for indie cinema, and I was trying to, but not like the ultra low budget stuff you guys like. I was looking for like the, critically acclaimed indie films, that kind of thing. And this one got some pretty decent critical praise when it came out. Watching it again, I'm like, a lot of this humor would not fly if this film was made today. But at the time, it was sort of counter programming to the more formulaic teen comedies like, the American Pie. American Pie was great, but like the sequel really was kind of a retread. But there were so many movies as well that came out in the wake of that. And this was sort of counter programming to that. So, Dave, you might be right. The people that saw it when it came out probably would get more out of it than the people that are seeing it for the first time today. It does have a great deal of nostalgia for me for a lot of reasons. I've seen it a handful of times over the years. I've never found it to be a laugh a minute. I think even at the beginning, I thought there were jokes that didn't land, parts where it's like, I think whoever said, did they really go there? Like the running joke where Andy will let kids die and then throw the witnesses out by the side of the road.
Yeah.
And apparently in the original script, he was straight up killing the witnesses, but David Wain's father's like, if you put that in the movie, I will disown you. So they toned it down. And honestly, I think it's kind of hilarious just dropping kids by the side of the road. It's dark.
Yes.
It's unconscionable, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, there was a kid he just straight up let drown.
Yeah, that was pretty dark. And again, it's like and he's a good example of the acting in this for the most part is way over the top. But I think they all realize that this is not meant to be taken seriously.
Oh, no.
And they, I kind of appreciate that over the top nature of the acting. And I really love them. Best thing about it is the over top compression of the timeline, which I know we'll be talking about as we go on. But
indeed,
it occurred to me as we just started that this is kind of like Night a Short Walk On Girl in that you're covering a short period of time, but so much is happening.
Yes.
It's not possibly happening. And that's part of the joke, I think, and it's great. So, yeah, it's a flawed movie, and yeah, parts of it have not aged well. But a lot of it has mellowed nicely in my mind. And again, it's a nostalgic film for me. And I still haven't gotten around to seeing the series. I've heard mostly negative things, but I'm still planning to give it a go one of these days. But
all right. Well, I picked this mainly because there is a kind of a D&D connection, and we're going to be doing that for the other series that I'm running for my channel. So I wanted to kind of kill two birds with one stone. Though it's not my first time watching it. Matter of fact, in the early 2000s, not long after it came out, a friend of mine said, "Oh man, you got to see this. This is the funniest crap ever." And I was in my early 20s when this came out. So yeah, I was like, okay, this looks interesting. So we watched it on a bootlegged VHS tape. And at the time, I thought it was hilarious. Though the jokes don't land as well now for me as they did then. I was always a fan of that weird off-the-wall humor, like with the Groove Tube or Kentucky Fried Movie or things like that. It's just this type of humor. I'm not used to seeing it in the 2000s, early 2000s, but I think it kind of mixed the styles of that 80s what the hell comedy with the kind of 2000s. We're going to try and offend as many people as humanly possible comedy. And the mixture is something experimental that's not perfect, but is reasonably entertaining. It was fun to watch it again, and there are some things that are really great. Even if you only have an hour to do it. But with that being said, I have to run real quick. Would one of y'all be willing to lead us off with talking about the plot while I run and do this real quick?
Sure. So I guess the film begins with, of course, a camp where I believe, at least in the very beginning here, we see I think we see a bunch of kids getting out of their camper or camping houses, and they go and wake up a male counselor, and the director of the camp sees them and says, "Hey, you're in trouble,"
Well,
kind of sarcastically.
basically, it opens with, it's the last day of camp, but it opens before the butt crack of dawn in the morning.
Yeah.
And you suddenly get all these kids, and you can tell it's basically the boys are in the girls' cabins. All of them. All of the boys are in the girls' cabins, and they're just, fooling around or whatever. And then they're like, "Oh, we got to get back. We're going to get in trouble," And yeah, the camp director's just sitting there, just like, "Y'all going to be so much trouble."
Yep, watching them all run back
Yep.
and run into each other, trying
Yeah.
to get back to where they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And, like you said, we're gonna be in trouble. Yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of trouble. Really, nobody cared.
She is a very chill director of the camp.
Yeah,
Beth is very chill. But yeah, that's basically the plot in a nutshell. Brandon already says it's the last day of camp. And really what you do, you get these timestamps periodically throughout the film, tell you what time of day it is. And sometimes they're part of the humor, depending on when they fall. And you pretty much it's a series of vignettes, different events happening during that day. You got a couple of running plot lines, but
especially the timestamps that are maybe a couple minutes away from each other.
yeah,
And
exactly.
And all of a sudden, you're in a totally different part of the camp with a totally different scene and everything.
Right. Sometimes with the same people.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, so much stuff is compressed into this. It's crazy. But I'm almost wondering if it would even be worth doing a scene by scene, because it really is really more about the characters themselves and the shenanigans they get up to.
Yeah, let's look at the characters for a moment. You've got the director of the camp, who doesn't
Beth.
seem to be able to control the kids within the camp very much. And she seems more interested in blossoming romance between an astrologist professor,
astrophysicist, yeah,
astrophysicist, or whatever the fuck he is.
An associate professor, as he emphatically mentions at one point, to his chagrin.
Well, nonchalantly kind of directing how things go in the camp.
Yeah.
And it seems like all of her camp counselors have issues.
Yeah.
You've got Katie and Coop, who I believe are the top two.
They're kind of the main character. Coop is the main kind of central character. And Michael Showalter, who plays Coop, is the co-writer of the film. So he's kind of he also plays the MC of the talent show. So he pulls double duty there. But yeah, Coop's like this big, goofy, kind of nerdy, sort of a lovable lug kind of character who is pining for Katie, who is hot. And he really wants her, but she's stuck in a go nowhere romance with a complete waste of space who's played by Paul Rudd.
Andy, who seems to be fucking anything that moves or twitches.
Pretty much.
Or at least one chick in particular. Although that barbecue scene is kind of hilarious.
Right.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
You've also got some interesting side characters being camp counselors as well. You've got the relatively chunky dude who seems to have a running gag of tagging along with the assistant lunch dude guy.
They're sort of the resident Beavis and Butthead here. Like they go around just kind of watching other people and commenting, and there were a couple.
Then of course the character who plays the head cook of the lunchroom is honestly quite priceless too.
Gene,
Gene, ex-Vietnam,
mm-hmm.
kind of has a castaway moments going on.
Mm-hmm. Severe PTSD, apparently talks to canned produce, and has a bunch of interesting hobbies that he accidentally lets slip as he talks.
And he has no problem being honest about it.
Yes. It's interesting that he volunteers this information and then immediately backs away. And he, of course, is played by Christopher Milani, who, as far as I can tell, is usually known for more dramatic work. Katie's Marguerite Moreau, who apparently starred in Mighty Ducks, but I am not too familiar with her otherwise.
I know her from Queen of the Damned as being I guess you could say she's part of the Talamascan group that kind of just studies and watches Lestat's group of vampires, and she kind of falls in love with him and all that jazz. So, kind of
cool.
Instantly remember her for that. But she plays that role.
I didn't realize that was her.
Yeah, that was her.
Okay, I knew she looked familiar.
I told you she was from Queen of the Damned.
Well, I didn't remember which person.
I said Katie, the lead chick.
No, I didn't remember which person she was in Queen of the Damned.
All right, Brandon, we were just discussing some of the characters. And we've gone through a couple here.
I mean, y'all hit Coop, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Like said. Then we've got the two that we mentioned, the sort of, I call them kind of the Beavis and Butthead characters, JJ and Gary. That's Zach Orth and AD Miles. And they've both been in a few things, but I couldn't really place it right offhand. You've also got, let's see, we mentioned Andy. That's Paul Rudd's character. We've got the two who want to put on the talent show that we mentioned earlier. And that's Susie and Ben. And they're played by Amy Poehler and Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, and
And
Bradley Cooper happens to have a relationship with another camp counselor.
the third Musketeer that goes around with JJ and the other dude. And what was his name again? I'm trying to. But yeah, this was Bradley Cooper's first movie. He had a couple of TV roles before that. But it was McKinley. McKinley is played by
Yeah,
Michael Ian
Ian
Black.
Black,
I
yeah.
know I've seen him in some stuff too. He has a secret relationship with Ben, but he also pals around with the other two. And he keeps like disappearing when they think it's the good part, you know?
Yeah.
They're trying to set him up with one of the
Right.
bitchin' babes that are taking off their clothes by the beach.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the gags that they had running for a while, which is actually kind of funny how they did that in a way. It could be looked at as insulting or progressive, depending on how you would think about it. But definitely the only real full-on sex scene in the movie, which is a gay sex scene. And I did like how they're coming back later. They're talking about it, and they come back and find that they're getting married behind the.
Right. They think that
And
they
it's being
think that he's
overseen by
sneaking
the
off with
camp
Susie.
director.
Yeah. Yeah. The and again, like Beth is not a taskmaster at all. Every now and then she'll put her foot down about someone having to do stuff, but she does have the camp nurse to help her out. The nurse is a little more hard nosed about people doing what they're supposed to do. And I don't remember who plays the nurse, but yeah, whatever. It was, but everyone likes Beth. Like she's really good at, you know, because she's generally supportive and pleasant. They usually will do what she wants. Every now and then she has to put her foot down. Like the part where she tells Andy to clean up after himself.
Yeah.
He's acting like, oh, Rudd, just acting like a 4-year-old. Throw this huge fit. But
that's exactly what I remembered first when you were talking about Taskmaster. I was remembering that scene.
But
right.
yeah,
But
you
it
have.
is.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, plot-wise, it is one of those final days, and everybody has to wrap up everything in the final days. I find it interesting that they decided they're going to do a production of Godspell as just something that they're going to do for the talent show, and they're going to start that morning for the evening. But time works differently when you're at camp.
Yeah.
As we notice in multiple occasions.
But it is interesting that they said this camp went for what, eight weeks, I think it was.
Yeah. Can you imagine each day being like that?
But yeah, I mean, it's like, seriously, I think for the purposes of the movie and for the humor of the movie, they had all these story arcs starting that morning. But that's one of the ways where realism goes right out the window. Because yeah, that production, especially as anal retentive as the directors were, they would not have waited until that morning.
And of course, you have David Hyde Pierce's character Henry, who comes in. He's a associate professor, which I love how he talks about associate professor. It's I'm less than.
Right.
Even though he's talking about tenure, which is not likely to happen with associate professor, but whatever.
Yeah, I know.
And him and the nerd kids, which will probably be more of a spotlight when Jake and I discuss for our 4th episode of the D&D horror. Was it tabletop horror series?
Yeah.
And I'll probably have the name down by the time we actually release the series.
We
But
can hope.
but he gets like the nerdy kids, and they're going to do kind of a science camp. And their whole thing is
Right.
they spot a meteor that's coming down, and they have to help prevent that before, not meteor, a piece of the International Space Station, which is falling to Earth, and they've got to do something about that.
Mhm.
And of course, Beth has fallen for him, and he's fallen for her, and they're trying to work out their relationship. You have Coop, who is technically the main character, one if there would be one in this. How he's trying to win his love, which I believe is that's Katie, right?
Yeah.
And who is kind of like a good friend to him, and he really is in love with her, but she's together with an asshole.
Mhm.
Let's see. Then there is of course, the sluttier girl who's going to sleep with who was the guy with the afro?
Well, okay, so we have Victor and Neil are the two who get sent on the overnight trip.
Yes.
But Victor had just been propositioned by Abby, the super slut, and it doesn't want to go. This is one of the few times Beth has to put her foot down. She's like, you need to go. You need to do this. You're the one who knows the rapids. And it's like, he doesn't want to because he wants to get laid.
Then you have the whole thing with the cook and his assistant, and him getting in touch with his own inner feelings.
Yeah.
You have the arts and crafts director and her
Yes.
issues
with her.
Molly Shannon in a very weepy role that ends up getting kind of cringe at the end.
Very cringe at the
Gideon
end.
Jacobs playing Aaron, one of her students. Yeah.
Oh my!
And of course, there's the kid who is shouting on the staircase, and it kind of gets a session with the blonde, or not blonde, the intended rapids.
Oh, you talking about the kid who shouts out the time throughout the
Oh
day?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think between him and Radio Kid, they're the kind of the announcers, and of course, Radio Kid is the. Also, it's kind of funny because later when they come in there, he's talking, and you notice none of his equipment's plugged in.
Yeah.
But
the
his big thing is he
beekeeper, as
doesn't.
calls himself.
He doesn't bathe, so
Yes.
they have that at the end as well. And then you have some little short things like the guy who.
Well, McKinley
thinks he's
has
a
given
robot.
him an ultimatum to bathe before tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mentioned before that the guy who was the robot, he ended up on being on Big Bang Theory.
So I think that's all the main.
Well,
plot
I
lines.
don't think we mentioned Elizabeth Banks, and she plays Lindsay, who's also kind of a slutty character, but not as bad as Abby is. But Paul becomes distracted by her. He's bored with Katie.
Oh,
He
yeah.
wants someone new. And at first he's put off by her barbecue face, but then he decides, what the hell? And
Well, actually, they actually make out like
right.
While he's a lifeguard.
Right.
Before
Yeah, that was
moment.
Yeah, that poor kid does like, hey, can I drive the boat? It's like, yeah, sure, it's the last day. Just be sure to gas it up before it's done. He's not a very good lifeguard.
And I think
Well,
that's
you're
the
gonna
same kid
let a
that
kid
then
that
drowned.
age take off at a Super Bowl like that, really?
That was the second time, though. The first time, the kid actually drowned.
No, I think it was the kid with the boat who did drown. I think he came back and then he kind of jumped in and I can't swim.
What you don't realize is that this is actually Camp Crystal Lake. Even though it is Camp Firewood, but it's
Hey,
that was Jason drowning. Okay.
Hey, if Andy was the lifeguard I could see any summer camp with a lifeguard like that could become a horror movie. I mean, that just seems a given. Yeah.
But those are the tales that they tell. Some we can go into more detail than others as we go. I really look at this as, with a lot of comedies, this style as it's more told in vignettes, particular scenes, than it is any particular timeline. There is a timeline, but it's not really as strict. As I say, time functions very strange in camp.
Yes, it does.
A good example of this, and you know what's weird, is I look back at this scene, and it was my favorite scene when I first watched it, and it's still been my favorite scene in the film. It sadly reflects the entire movie time-wise, and that is when they decide to go to town.
Yeah.
So, even my wife laughed at that one. But yes, I mean, they go to town and they have, of course, David Hyde Pierce is looking up the camp. What was it? Camp counselor,
camp director, yeah,
camp director section in the library.
Yeah, and it happens to be right next to the astrophysics section, which
she's trying to look up.
But basically, they had both independently come up to the nurse asking, like, where would I find a book on ... And she's like, I don't know, a bookstore or a library. And then Beth rushes off. And then, Henry comes up. And she's like, Henry, library. But Beth goes off in her truck and they're all like, oh, Beth's going into town, let's go with them. Like half the counselors go with her at the drop of a hat. Yeah.
And it's funny how they do this. They do the whole drug thing where they start off smoking cigarettes, then getting beer.
Alcohol.
And these are all supposed to be barring their ages, all of the counselors are supposed to be in their mid-teens.
Yeah.
Counselors.
And so then it goes from alcohol to weed, and then they're getting like the hard drugs to doing the drug deal, and then they're ripping off an old lady in order to afford their habit, and then they're like dragged out.
Yeah. And this all on for only about an hour, really.
And then it shows them all in a broken down hall in a seedy building, and some of them are what's that?
Some of them are already spazzed out, looking like they've been through some shit.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got some shooting up, you've got some they're clearly high, and then you got Beth sitting there looking like she's going through the DTs. And it's like, yeah. And then you get the punchline where they all drive back into camp all happy and healthy and everything, and then the one guy, I think it's JJ, says, it's always good to get away from camp, even if it's just for an hour.
Right. It's like they did all this stuff that they just showed in an hour, and then they come back to camp just perfectly fine.
Right.
It's one of the few jokes in this movie that fully held up for me, because I laughed hysterically when I first saw it and got the punchline. I kind of sat there open-eyed at it at first, but when you got to the punchline, then it hit me. Then I started laughing the first time I saw it. And even now, and this time I think about it, and really and truly, that applies to the whole film. They're all doing stuff that essentially would be a full summer camp worth of stuff in a day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, I mean, shoot, even when we get to the talent show and things like that, it's just quite.
Like in reality, those kids in the water raft would have gone all over that waterfall by the time he got there.
Well, why don't we hit that one real quick? And I mean, they go on the trip. He drops them off and says, "Okay, I'll meet y'all in the morning," and he rushes right back on the van, And so they start the water rafting trip, and the kids complain. It's like, well, he's the only one that knows the rapids. We'll never make it out. He's like, you're right. So he just gets out of the boat, walks off, and leaves the kids as he goes to get the other guy.
Just steal someone's
motorbike, which he seemingly can't, catch the guy who's on foot running because he ended up crashing the van. And meanwhile,
I did like the part. I did like the part where they're running and he's bearing down on the motorbike, but he, like you said, he can't quite catch him up. And then there's that bale of hay in the middle of the road.
I was just gonna bring that up because it was like, what the heck? He stops with that bale of hay like that. It was like it's a wall or something. It was just like,
right.
And meanwhile, his hookup is hooking up with everybody that's alive while he's gone.
Now, granted, those two who went on the rafting trip, especially Joe Lo Truglio, but also Ken Marino, I tend to associate them. Apparently, this is more of an appropriate association for Joe Lo Truglio, but I tend to associate them with Reno 911. And I can imagine that they would be similarly confounded by a bale of hay if we were talking that particular group of cops.
Yep, can't even figure out that you can ride around the bale of hay.
Right.
But,
Who knew?
But they do. But after his heart is broken, they do find him, and he finds his inner strength as he is able to save the kids just before they go over the waterfall.
After he gets slapped a couple of times,
yeah. Yeah, he has to take a couple slaps and all that.
What about when they're looking for him? And they totally destroy that office. I mean, that was just
that medical office. That was just
like over the top.
I think that describes most of the movie. Over the top.
Indeed.
And of course, then you have our
astrophysicist.
David Hyde Pierce's little run where he basically just is teaching the kids science, and they keep looking up at this kind of star or something that they're identifying, and then realize it's part of the International Space Station that's hurtling to Earth. So they have to devise a device that can locate it and find out where it falls, and then they figure out a plan with which they can even slightly alter the trajectory of it to where it won't, do it much damage. And
they do it by the roll of a dice.
Yes, they say basically it's like, where are we going to get a device that can randomly generate numbers from 1 to 20?
Right.
As every GM worth his salt. No, it travels with his D20. Basically, the kid who's the D&D nerd saves the day by bringing his D20.
What'd you guys think of that device they came up with?
It was interesting.
It brings me back to the Exeronius machine from Ernest Goes to Camp. But they do save the day, and he's able to get his tenure. Matter of fact, that was one of the ways that Janine's character Beth was able to win Henry over, is that she was willing to write the dean about how he needs his tenure.
Right.
But any other comments on any of those so far?
Not so
far. I will say, for me personally, again, going back to my introduction to this, for me, it was really hilarious watching David Hyde Pierce playing a character who was very much like Niles in a lot of ways. But Niles would not be caught dead at a summer camp, let alone wearing plaid. And or with the porn stash. I think there's definitely a lot of ways that this was sort of a weird marriage of Niles and Martin in this character. But, he was a lot of fun to watch in this one. And I really did think that, like, the as over the top and insane and ludicrous as the whole love story with him and Beth was, I thought it was actually really sweet. It was one of the nicer parts of the movie. And they played off each other really well, I thought. And he was good with the kids. You know, they were it was kind of fun watching some of those sequences too, you know. Especially that monstrosity of a machine was amusing.
And then, of course, you have the cafeteria guy.
Oh, he was
And it's funny because, of course, you have a whole bunch of Freudian slips where he talks, where he talks about his sexuality. He's also a Vietnam vet, and of course, 81. That would be appropriate time-wise. And funnily enough, I could have actually seen this film coming out in 81. But we'll talk about that more at the end. But of course, he is helped out by a can of, I think it's mixed vegetables or spinach. I can't remember what it was.
mixed vegetables.
Mixed vegetables, who helps talk him through and helps him be himself. As we get the climactic, the scene where he publicly humps the refrigerator.
Because I can seriously tell you that I can suck my own dick.
And he's an interesting guy, and he also helps. He's also there to help Coop in the end, but we'll talk about that when we hit Coop's. I want to save Coop's story for last because technically it's the main story.
You can't have an 80s movie without a montage.
Oh yeah. But what did y'all think of his story, the Cooks?
Disturbing, but amusing.
Well, I get that he was attracted to his fellow counselor. She was rather hot, but even when they were together, he was rather nervous, and he didn't really seem to care about her all that much entirely because he kept taking back his plaid shirt.
Oh, well, we'll get to Coop in a minute. I mean, as far as the cook, I mean.
Oh, the cook? Oh.
I was wondering, I was like, oh, what?
I thought you meant Coop. Let's see. The cook, well, he's a character. I like him. He comes off as kind of greasy and oily around the gills, and has no problem letting some sexual things slip to his fellow coworker, and he gets real angry when someone when the river guide decided to ask for more mashed potatoes.
To me, my favorite character in the film is the can of mixed vegetables.
Yeah, he was like an Oscar the Grouch.
The kid that what?
He likes the can of mixed vegetables. That was his favorite character.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, you can tell that he's very standoffish. I mean, even in the beginning scene when they're having breakfast, it's like, here's your potatoes, and just drops this giant thing of potatoes in front of the table.
I think.
Well, even how he acts with the guy that is working with him, he's like stands right up on him, and he'll say whatever, and then the other guy will catch one of his little phrases and call him on it. And he's like,
I distinctly heard you say dick cream.
And then the other guy, the other cook, he just keeps going about his business, just like whatever. Go
I'm
away.
gonna go fondle my sweaters.
Well, and of course, him and Coop have an interesting thing going on where it seems like he's like doing some Rocky shit with him.
Yeah, and that I definitely want to hit on with Coop's story. But of course, there's a couple of basic cleanup, like of course, the two drama ones when they're trying to do the Godspell stuff. It's kind of light and it doesn't really impact stuff until the talent show. And I want to talk about the talent show at the very end. But and I think that the other one there is, of course, the arts and crafts teacher, and that is that turns basically into a therapy session where she's crying, and the kids are the ones giving her the therapy, and then you have that disturbing ending with her hooking up with the one kid.
I'll admit, up until that point, that was actually pretty hilarious. I love that how they flipped the script and had the kids knowing more about, really life than this woman who she does give her age, and she is one of the older people on site. I think she said she was what, like 32?
35.
35.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's definitely one of the older people there. But you got these kids who are probably 10, and one of them is in particular, but just generally the whole class is, it's a full-on therapy session. And like I said, it starts off pretty funny. And I kind of liked it when Judah Friedlander shows up as her husband. Little cameo there. But that was interesting.
Any other, and again, I want to hold off on the talent show until the very end. But any other plots, little plots other than Coop's that y'all wanted to touch on before we hit his? All right, well, let's just move on with Coop's. Coop's is pretty simple. I mean, he's looking for love, and it's not so good for him. Of course,
she's Katie's going through a list of like.
She's trying to hook him up with somebody, and he's not having it because he's in love with her. He's probably the goofiest of all of them. Other than, I mean, shoot, he's even goofier than David Hyde Pierce's character. But he ends up. He is pretty much, in my opinion, one of the main characters. Actually, if there's a main character of this, it would be him. Even though I'm not sure that this is a movie that has main characters, he's definitely the one that it comes back to, and his relationship with her. And she definitely vibes with him. But and after a montage where he is trained by the cook and the can of mixed vegetables as the master, he is able to finally win her heart for one night. And then of course, she comes back to the whole thing and say, look, he's hot. I'm all about the hotness right now. I'm only 16.
Right.
Maybe later on I'll think about something better. But this is my interest. In a way, I kind of find that ending kind of refreshing in some ways. It's like, yes, there's truth in that.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe that might have been the first point in the film where their ages were explicitly stated. I think that was
other than the art teacher.
Yeah, I mean, Janine Garofalo said straight up that I think she said she'd been there for 5 years and was a counselor for 3. So I guess that kind of hints that she's supposed to be about college age. But yeah, almost all the others, it's kind of left open to interpretation. But almost all of them are clearly older than 16. Almost without question, they're clearly older than that age. Like Michael Showalter and Zach Orth were both born in 1970, so they would have been about 30.
Oh yeah,
31 maybe when this movie was made.
But these actors
Margaret-
were in their 20s and 30s
Yeah.
when they were doing this.
Katie is Margaret Moreau. She was about 23 or so when this movie was made. So she's the youngin, and she looks like the youngin.
Mhm. But
You
this,
know.
a lot of the casting was on purpose,
Yeah,
not just because of the comedic chops, but because, yes, they wanted to make fun of the trope of
Yeah.
the like 30-year-olds playing teenagers, which I grew up with that. When I mean,
Right.
a lot of stuff like even Nickelodeon shows, it was very common to have high schoolers played by like 20 somethings or 30 somethings.
yeah.
So
So-
it's it's a funny trope that they went back on.
hmm So Paul Rudd was actually one of the oldest ones. He was born in '69, so he would have been about a year older than most of them. Yeah. I'm just kind of double checking. Yeah, almost the entire cast was born between, well, most of them were 70 and 71. Rudd was 69. Bradley Cooper was like 75, and then Marguerite Moreau was like 77. So they're all a little older than their stated age.
And shoot, they were all older than me, and I was out of my teens when this movie came out.
Just think, you could have been in this movie.
I could have been, yes.
I could have too. Wouldn't that have been great?
There would be worse credits to have by my name. Matter of fact, I can think of some worse credits by my name that will be out in the future.
I think we all already have worse credits by our name.
But
I was born in '72, so I kind of was right in the middle of all their ages.
see, you would have been the exact age you'd have been in that age range to be a counselor at this camp. You would have been able to play a teenager back then. But I know, Dave, you were talking about the whole flannel shirt thing, which I did think that was a funny interaction where it's like, I'm cold, here, have this. And then like almost immediately after.
Right.
That's my favorite flannel. I'm going to have that back.
Yeah, right now.
But they do utilize that line later in the payoff where he gifts the flannel and that little itty bitty.
Yes, I loved that. It was like almost like it was too big to be a ring, but it was almost about big enough to be a jewelry box.
I didn't think that was Coop walking out there. I had actually thought that Stabler had actually, or the dude who played the lunch a guy had actually shaved like all his entire face and like became him since Coop was up on stage, you know.
So, well, let's talk about the big finale, which is the talent show. Now, every story that you start here comes to an end at this talent show. I mean, technically, the raft thing gets resolved before that, but they're all over there at the talent show, and it's emceed by this guy who is intentionally unfunny. Which, of course, the crowd is reacting like it's the most hysterical thing of all when he's telling these "I'm this old" jokes.
Yeah. And the way he's doing it, the delivery, it sounds like someone you'd find in a Vegas lounge or something like that.
Yes.
I actually kind of thought that he almost sort of reminded me of like who's that like old guy who was an oh god.
Oh, you're talking like George Burns.
Burns. He kind of reminded me of like a George Burns character.
I was so old that the dinosaurs had to give me my driver's license.
So they had pterodactyl legs for breakfast. Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of these other things though did come to fruition. I mean, the Coop story did. a lot of it is celebrating the fact that the cook had already finished his, but you still had like the Godspell performance,
Mm-hmm.
which of course this whole time they're crapping on this like whole thing, like because it's so easy to come together with a full choreography scene from a Broadway musical in one day.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course,
Amy Poehler's character Susie,
bad.
she is particularly harsh on her students. She is like unrelenting in her criticism.
and they pull off near perfect performance, which
Right.
then they get booed right afterwards.
Exactly. The same audience that was applauding the old dude and the kid balancing the broom,
Yes.
and all that stuff.
And then, of course, you had the one nerdy guy who always pretended he was a robot, and he had told her before, "It's like I'm working on something, but I don't know if it would be considered like a talent show thing, like a song or anything." "No, just do it."
I don't care. Whatever you're working on, bring it to the stage.
And he just creates this like weird wind tunnel vortex thing,
which kind of averts the Skylab thing to a different vicinity. I feel.
I'd like to think the spirit of D&D did that.
Right.
Because that's the other thing is that you also have
happened because they rolled the dice and they got and it went there.
Is that part of the whole satanic panic thing, that because of the power of D&D, this Skylab that was clearly God smiting this den of sinners was thwarted?
yeah, well, unfortunately, we've been all about the satanic panic D&D movies lately, so but we're getting out of that after this. Well, one more, but I don't think that one's a satanic panic movie. That's just weird. But yeah, even during this time, of course, and then during this, you have all the other stuff. Like you have Coop hooking up with the girl that he loves. You've got the Henry and the nerd kids helping avert disaster, which is kind of anticlimactic itself with the piece falling, but it's a very soft landing considering it came from orbit. And in general, after the whole thing is over, everybody is like applauding, like the slow clap, and then it just goes. But you've got to have a slow clap in this type of movie. But
well, it starts with JJ, and you can tell like he was all set to heckle the guy, and then he's sitting there going, "Holy shit, that was awesome!" Yeah.
But you never know what's going to appeal to this particular crowd, to be sure. But that's the wrap up of the big council event. Was there anything that happened in the talent show that y'all wanted to comment on that we haven't talked about?
Just the fact that Andy got slapped away when he tried to hit on girl again, because evidently she'd had a moment with another female.
Well, I mean, it looked like Coop actually had fully won at that point, where he was able to do it, and the other guy was fully shamed. And then, of course, we the art teacher, her husband comes back, but because of the coaching and therapy given by her class of kids, she is able to stand up for herself and send him away.
What about the kid with the fart bomb that everybody thought was the greatest?
That was the same kid who was necking with the chick who was necking with the chick in the crowd.
Wasn't he the kid that was yelling everything out?
Yeah.
Oh, and they decide to go ahead and force the smelly kid into the shower.
Yep. Well, that happens a little bit earlier at dinner. It's like they've got this signal between them, and they all just grab him.
But you want to know something? Out of most of the things that happened, I could see that happening on the last day of camp. That I could
Yeah.
see. In the 80s or 90s, because I was in camp in that time period. And that's probably going to be the question I'm going to ask at the end of this. But yeah, I used to go to summer camp in the 90s and I hated it. But I could see something like that happening in camp. That actually is something I could have seen happen. Not necessarily any of the other stuff, but definitely that. So the day after, everybody's leaving, and of course, Coop is given that speech by the girl he loves, and she's just like, look, I'm a teenager, I'm only 16. At this point, it's all about sex, and he's hot. And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad she's honest.
She's like, but we could be friends, though. Yeah, because that's going to be part of that conversation anytime, yeah. And then we have this interesting thing with Beth and Henry where somehow overnight he's already won the Hopkins Award, which looks like a bowling trophy pretty much.
And he got his tenure.
He got his tenure. They somehow have already discussed that she somehow at the tender age of like 20 or whatever she is, that she's apparently infertile. But wait a minute. No, she's not.
She's pregnant because of the one night they had together.
Exactly. It's like they must have had a very busy night. But yeah, there were a few, and then and then the girl, the woman and her child husband to be are apparently already getting married. What, in a week, something like that? And yeah, there's a lot.
That was that was probably the most disturbing part of the film.
Yeah, she's a Shotokan. But anyway, there were a couple others in the morning, but that was probably the main ones. Right?
Yep. So that's Wet Hot American Summer. Did y'all have
any
other?
There was one thing that was discussed earlier. It's a random, out of context scene. Well, it's a random scene that gets a nice callback post credits, and that's like they're all just kind of hanging about.
Oh yeah,
we should meet up again in 10 years. That would be and then I think it's Susie's like, when? In 10 years. No, I mean when? What time? So let's say 9. Let's say 9, and that way we'll all be here at 9:30. And then one of them's like, well, why don't we just say 9:30 and make it our beeswax to be here at 9:30? We'll be adults and we should be able to do that, which obviously they don't know anything about adults. Yeah, so they all agree 9:30 in the morning, 10 years hence. And then in Michael Ian Black's character, I think he's the one who said, we got to make sure we're here at 9:30. He's like, good, because I got something at 11.
And he shows up exactly at 9:30. It's like, why are y'all here? It's like,
no,
it's 9. So
little after 9:30.
It's like, it was we decided 9 just so the people would be here by 9:30. And
but I just love that part. It's like where he's like, good, because I have something at 11. It's like I've already moved it a couple of times.
So, any other thoughts on the plot, such as it was?
Not that I know of.
Well, let's go on into production. So one of the things I wanted to talk about production before we go into any effects or anything is the poster design. You ever notice that when you see this art design and this lovely art design that we have behind us, as we discuss, on a poster, you kind of know what you're going to get in this type of film. I mean, you think about it. Because you see this in films like this, Grandma's Boy. There are plenty of other. A lot of the National Lampoons have
Well, I was
these.
thinking 80s. So National Lampoons, I was kind of thinking Porky's. I was kind of thinking
But
that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of similarities in those movies. There's a lot of raunchiness. There's a lot of in-your-face comedy, a lot of weird comedy. And I just thought it's interesting because when you see this, it's weird to say, but when you see this art design, you kind of know what you're going to get.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking a National Lampoon at least.
And I could see the National Lampoon name attached to this. There are a lot worse films that have had that name attached. Yeah. And this one, I think, actually could have been maybe not the greats, but could have been one of the more entertaining of the ones that bore the National Lampoon's name. We were just talking about Vegas Vacation. Not us, but me and a couple other people were talking about Vegas Vacation. And about how it does not have the National Lampoon's name. And there were reasons for it. As apparent. Yeah, it does not.
Huh.
And one of the reasons for it is they were trying to single themselves out because the name basically was just something that anybody could grab out those days. And if you really look at films with National Lampoons in the front of it, it was not a sign of quality. It may have started out as a sign of quality comedy-wise, but it definitely has not maintained that. So it was just interesting. But what did y'all think as far as like production, effects, backgrounds, just in general?
Well, it wasn't a type of film to really have much in like the effect, type of a thing. So I thought how they set everything up fit with the comedy that they were trying to portray. Like you said, there wasn't really much for effects in it. I mean, I like the machine. That was just something else. What they came up with, all the stupid stuff that was put together to make.
Yeah, there were at least like 6 donuts connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually see the machine in the poster behind us with the trash can and the keyboard and the safety cone and the donuts.
Yeah.
So I thought it was good. I mean, because what they did for the production, brought the comedy. Like we were talking about when they came across that hay barrel.
Yeah. Even when the piece of Skylab falls, it looks so cheesy. Yes. And so, like, this was a threat, really. Right. But that's partly it's a reflection. The movie had a very low budget, and one gets the impression they probably spent at least half of it on the cast, and they probably spent a lot of it on the rights to the song that the movie kicks off with Jane by Starship, which is a great song. I love it. But it's a great way to kick off an 80s summer camps kind of
movie. They had a lot of songs in it, actually.
What's that?
They had a lot of songs in it, actually, that they probably had to get rights to.
Well, why don't we talk about that while we're at it?
They probably spent a lot of their budget on the whatever rights they could get.
I mean, shoot, the song they played during the whole talent show where the guy was doing his thing.
The song that they were trying to sing to wake up Coop.
Yeah. Godspell.
That they were doing Beth by Kiss. They just the words never played, but that's what the song was.
I mean,
and apparently
they had that scene in Godspell, that entire scene.
Apparently, David Wain has used that a few times. Like I was looking at the trivia and they reminded me of this. I can't remember it from the movie. But the director is the same guy who did Role Models, and he used the same song in that one. So
Jefferson
apparently he's a
Starship.
good fan. What's that?
Jefferson Starship with
Yep.
Chain.
Yep.
Love is All Right Tonight. Rick Springfield. Danny's Song.
Mhm.
Log into Messina. Turn Me Loose.
Yep, I knew that one was in there right as soon as that came on. I'm like, hey, I know that one.
So
Another
Yeah.
one by Loverboy was When It's Over.
it was a good soundtrack. I mean, in my opinion, it was a pretty fun soundtrack.
No doubt.
Any other words about production and soundtrack? I do think production-wise, as far as presenting a summer camp film, it did present as a summer camp film. There was no
I think the music was right for the time period that it was being portrayed for. I do think that they definitely portrayed a camp of some sort.
And did it come across to you like an 80s raunchy comedy?
Oh yeah.
Sort of, but I wouldn't call it entirely comedy because it wasn't always funny to me.
So, and that's the thing to me is I feel like this was more of a spoof of a lot of those 80s comedies back then. And I do think that it did reflect very well on the 80s at the time.
I think it was a spoof, but I also think it was sort of a it was a very affectionate spoof if it was
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Oh no, I don't think they were like being mean or anything. I just thought it was they're paying homage to a lot of that and a lot of the weird humor. Like I said, you watch some stuff like Kentucky Fried Movie or The Groove Tube, which I will one day bring up one of those here.
Hey, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I have a serious love for that film.
I think it was somewhat of a spoof too, but like in a good way. Yes.
In a good way.
Yeah, I mean that in a good way.
So, with that being said, why don't we go into then favorites? So, favorite scene. And you know what? I'm going to do something actually very different for this. I'm going to exclude the in town scene because, in my opinion, that is the favorite scene. But so other than that favorite scene, and did you go to summer camp as a kid? And if you did, would this be a summer camp you would like to attend? So let's start with you, Jake.
Me?
Jake.
Oh.
What's up? Well, if I can't pick, because I will admit the punchline to that scene is the one moment that always made me crack up. But
I've always.
If we're talking other moments, other parts of the film, maybe I don't know, maybe there's a lot of parts I like. I'm trying to think which one I would pick as maybe the montage, the training montage, just because, like I said, you gotta have a montage, but the whole idea that the can is the master just kind of amused me. Maybe some of the that whole bit about about meeting at 9:30 and it's like good because I get some at 11. I just that little bit amused me, and probably the whole bit with the haystack in the middle of the road. that was fun. As far as summer camp, I'm not 110% sure that I ever did anything that was this type of summer camp. I definitely did camp. I did day camps with the Scouts, and I did 4-H camp, which honestly, for the life of me, I can't remember how long that was, but I want to say it was a week, maybe two at tops. That was probably the closest to what I've done is a proper outdoor summer camp. I mean, there were also the Bible camps, but they were not outdoors. They were indoor. You know, that was actually what introduced me to Roanoke College, and that was a 1 week thing in high school. But I never really had the full on go to camp for the summer experience. But like I said, the 4-H camp was pretty fun. I know I did that at least once. It was somewhere along the James. I remember getting to find all kinds of cool stuff, and that was a lot of fun.
Now, if you could, would you attend Camp Firewood as a kid?
If I could choose...
If you could have chosen to go to Camp Firewood as a kid, would you have gone?
I think it's really hard to say. Would I? I guess it might have been dependent on how it was pitched to me. But generally, I have not. You know, like you see all these movies where these people are like, "Oh man, we have to go to camp or whatever." I was never that kid. I liked camp, so. I would have looked forward to it most likely.
So you're a nature kid, yeah.
I love being outside. Now, an 8-week camp, I might wonder about, you know.
Yeah. That's all summer, pretty much.
Yeah, no.
I'm sure parents would have loved that camp.
Now, if someone told me it was an 8-week camp at the beach, I might have gone for that.
All right. Well, so Dave, what was your favorite scene in this film?
I think my favorite scene in the film was when Gene was talking to the mixed vegetable cat.
Yeah, that was funny.
And when Paul Rudd's character Andy noticed barbecue on the blonde's face. So those are 2 moments that I'll take from this film. And even though I know you exclude the ending, I did like the geek dude's talent. So.
Oh, I just excluded the town thing. So Dave, did you attend a summer camp as a kid?
I attended a summer camp for a week. Forget exactly the name of the place. I do think it was of a Christian nature because my mom was all religious at the time, and I know my sister went to Camp Lewisimo and eventually became a camp counselor there. But I myself, I remember. I remember actually fishing with some corn and actually caught a turtle. At a lake, I remember us doing all kinds of singing. I think I remember learning the song with Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown and threw her out the window, the second story window. I remember hearing that a lot. And although I wish they would have done ghost stories like at night.
Oh yeah, me too.
We didn't. So,
Yeah.
But I did have a little bit of a camp experience. So.
And on the rearview mirror was the hook.
You always want one of those like legend stories, like do you realize that right now where we're sitting is where the butcher pig from Transylvania once laid his family down in, or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So
something crazy.
The speaking of kind of fun horror stories, though, I didn't go into that, but like I mentioned the day camps for scouts, but I also did do the week long one at T. Brady Saunders a couple of times. And there is the story I like to tell where me and my best friend at the time, they had pre-set up tents. We're doing tents. So again, not cabins, but tents. And our tent, we found 6 Black Widow spiders in and on the tent we were using. There was at least one in one of the cots. There was one in the crook of the ceiling. There were a couple in the wood fixtures they had around it. We killed a couple of them, but we kind of made do with the others. But that was kind of an interesting experience, I can tell you.
Well, in all fairness, I mean, I would definitely be getting the ones out of the beds, but as far as any of the other ones, I mean, they ain't gonna bother you.
I don't.
No, unless you roll over on them at night while you're sleeping, or they.
Which is why you want to get them out of the beds.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So Dave, if you as a child had the chance to go to Camp Firewood, would you have gone?
No. Specifically because these camp counselors did not know how to be camp counselors. Maybe Katie.
Would you have been one of the kids
that Dave, you wouldn't know that until you've gone at least once.
So Dave, would you be one of those kids that was thrown out of the car on the way out?
Not really. I would probably be one of the geeky ones.
Well, you might have had fun though. You'd have been able to save the world.
No, I think David definitely would have been thrown out of the car.
They threw him out the window.
You would, wouldn't you?
So, Tammy, what is your favorite scene in this movie?
Well, one of my favorite scenes I do like when he has the conversation with the can. When I was watching it, I was just laughing. I was like, okay.
And once you realized who was playing Jean,
yes, and then I liked them building that machine. It just was such a trip. All the stuff they put on that stupid thing, and it was supposed to still work, and it was just like, you really think this thing is gonna do something? Really?
hey, it's those donuts, man. The next movie to watch.
Imagine if they had powered it with eggs erroneous.
So, did you go to camp as a kid?
Actually, when I was about 11 years old, I went and visited some of my cousins in Colorado, and went to camp for, I think it was 2 weeks up in the mountains. And it actually was a lot of fun. I mean, I'm not one for heights, and they somehow got me to go. It wasn't real high, but high enough to propel down the mountain, this mountain thing, this cliff. We walked up to the top of it, and then I looked at him, I said, well, if we walked up here, why can't I just walk back down? Why do I have to go down it with these ropes and backwards? And but they convinced me to do it, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that high, but I really would rather have walked back down instead. But I actually really, that was the only time I ever went to camp. And like I said, it wasn't even here, in Wisconsin. It was in Colorado with my cousin, But I had fun.
So, would you have wanted to attend Camp Firewood as a kid?
Oh yeah. I think I would have had fun.
Hey, some of those kids did have fun. I admit, they looked like they were having fun over there.
I've always been one of them, especially as I got older, because went through a bunch of stuff with my mom, okay, but one thing she was always right on is that I always look too innocent for my own good. So I would have probably really fit in.
So now, would you have been one of the kids thrown from the car?
No, I would have been the one throwing the kid out of the car.
You'd have been helping out.
Yep. David,
So,
get out of here.
so my favorite scene, other than the town scene, probably either him throwing the kid out of the van. I don't know why, but that just cracks me up. Or the scene where they're talking about like needing the random number generator and the kid producing the 20-sided dice, because that one those two always stick out to me. I guess out of this whole group, I'm one of the few people who is very familiar with summer camp, which is funny because I am not an outdoor person. But I was in scouting from like second grade till I graduated high school. I'm an Eagle Scout, believe it or not, as weird as that seems. And I have been camping since I was 10. So camping is not unusual for me. I've attended summer camp basically since age 11 to 16. I attended Camp Shenandoah and even did Klondike Derby, which was winter camp. And never again for that, because we got our tents flooded in 36-degree weather. But as far as things go, I would say that there are some things that I look at these movies and I laugh at because I can recognize it and recognize what they're aping on, because I've been to summer camp so often. I know these things. But there's also, because really and truly, there are points in that time period where you almost are kind of feral, going about basically taking care of yourself. And I probably, as a kid, I would have said no to Camp Firewood just because I didn't like going to summer camp. But if I had to go to a summer camp, I might have actually enjoyed Camp Firewood just because it would have been a strange and entertaining, like.
I'll be honest. I would have rather gone to Camp Nightmare from Goosebumps than here.
But and I would definitely not have been one of the ones thrown out. I wouldn't have been one of the nerdy kids. I would have probably been one of the. I would have probably been one of those kids in the background, just enjoying myself. Because I wouldn't have been the drowning kid. I would have been basically right there. There's probably part of me that would have been noting how dismissive all the counselors were, though.
I could see you in that class, that one class giving therapy, though.
But that is Wet Hot American Summer. I hope you all enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's only 4 of us. Did any? I think instead of doing outros, and before I hand it out to Dave, is there anybody that has anything that they really feel they want to put out, like as something upcoming from them?
I think the only thing that we have coming up is where we're going to be doing the movie Fracture this Sunday, so on the other channel.
Yeah.
So those of you who want to come and listen to us discuss Fracture, hey, get off me! Hit my ear. Anyway.
And next week we are going to be covering the Evan Jacobs film, The Park.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get the name. His name is Isaac, and let's see, Jacobs. He's all, and this guy died, and it was very sad that it happened last month. And I really, really wanted to do something to honor his memory because it is really sad. One of the things that he's probably best known for is his role. Okay, Isaac Golub, Golub. He's best known for playing Father Dingleberry in the Death Toilet series, and I do believe that he actually did finish filming Death Toilet 5 before he was taken from us. Which he was a very entertaining actor. The last film that he was in, he actually starred in, which was Amityville Death Toilet, where he played Greg G. Allen, which I believe was the paranormal podcaster who decided to stay in the place with the haunted toilet. So the park is the one that Evan Jacobs had said was his favorite with him in it. So I said, okay, well, I want us to do some sort of homage to that, especially with that loss. Any loss is felt, and a sudden loss like that is always felt. So my best wishes to them and the family, and we hope that next week we'll be able to pay respects, and we should have Evan Jacobs on with us that time too. So we should have the director of the film. He can tell us what he liked about it, and I'll be able to give it a second chance myself and see what I think about it a second time through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, Dave.
I
Yours.
just want to say a little something. If you guys know anybody or whatever that rides motorcycles, please tell them to make sure they watch their surroundings as best as they can. My car club, their son was out with his friends on the motorcycles, and they were out on their Harleys, just driving like not acting up or anything like that. And this lady blew a stop sign and hit one of them and killed them.
Oof.
And the one that she hit was like only feet away from my friends that run the car club son. And he had to watch this happen. So please, if you're out on motorcycles, people aren't watching out for you. You need to watch out for them. I'd really hate to hear any more stories like this year.
Right.
Most definitely.
Yeah, people just don't pay attention. I had almost had similar experience myself yesterday. I'm driving a truck, but yeah, people don't pay enough attention.
Alrighty. So let's start with you, Peter.
Well, another real quick, as far as upcoming stuff, Brandon, I'm surprised you didn't mention as well what's coming up on our channel. They're doing our Cromartie discussion next week. Next week, right?
Yep, next Tuesday.
Yeah. It's good times.
Yep, it's a fun one, and if any of y'all are real big fans of the channel, y'all welcome to watch the thing and let me know, and I might let y'all on. You never know.
Yeah. And Dave, this one will be easy to fit into your schedule. It's very short.
Yeah, Dave, if you have a chance, you should watch it. Come on with us next week.
You got a link for it, or?
It's on Amazon Prime. I don't know if you have that, but
I do.
Oh, well, yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. You can watch that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's Cromartie High. I'll let you. I'll send you the spelling. It's actually, I think it's one that you would enjoy, Dave.
Okay.
There's also a live action movie that's quite amusing too. I don't know if we'll.
It is. One day we'll cover it on this show.
Right.
I haven't decided to put it forward yet, and I'm probably the only one who would. But who knows? Maybe Jake and I will coordinate one day with some anime movies. Maybe we'll coordinate and say, okay, my submission is Nana, and Jake's submission is Nana 2, or something like that. You know.
Maybe.
But and of course we do have a pickup video. I do anyway.
Nice.
Where I'm trying out a new style of pickup, where I show off my my acquisitions of from Umbrella Entertainment, because I was trying them out, for both Weird and Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey.
Okay. So why don't we start with you, Tammy? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I go on this channel and another, and before this week is over, I will have been David's fiance for 15 years, and I collect things of my own. And now that it's summertime, I enjoy taking my 1972 Grand Prix out to the shows and looking at all the other beautiful cars.
Alrighty. How about you, Jake?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake, and the occasional co-host of SeptumSin versus the World, or the also to generally keep very busy, very, very, very busy. Even today, where it was a friggin' sauna outside, I was outside potting plants, but you know, it's because one of my gigs is running a small native plant or helping run a small native plant nursery. So, it is a job that never ends, but it is a very good one, very fulfilling one. I also try to make some time for viewing, and you know, also to join these folks for their discussions. And yeah, that's about it for me. I'm glad to join you guys for this one.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, well, you know, SeptumSin versus the World. Never know when I'm going to update. Though we did update on Schlockaholics. I guess I'm, you know, I try to remember that one because I just realized, oh, wait, I'm a part of that channel. But we do, we've been kind of off on the Schlock talk lately, which was, I think, one of our big hooks for people. But we are going to get back to it. Once fishing season's done, I think we'll get back to our Schlock talks. But as far as like our discussions, however, we've discussed Return to Splatter Farm, and recently this weekend we actually discussed the feature film Night of the Axe, which is actually the longer version of the short film. And if you like the low budget slasher scene, this one really is fun. I love both the short film and the feature. So you should check it out. Face Melt Productions is one to watch. I mean, right now they've done 2 short films and 1 feature, and all of them are really good. So if you like that stuff, you should definitely jump on it while you can. Get it to where you can actually get to know these people, because I really have a feeling that they're going to be big in the future. So you should check them out.
Okay. And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey. Hopefully you have not had as hot of a summer as these fine folks, but hopefully you enjoyed our discussion. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also podcast under similar circumstances. So check us out. We're going to be talking about the movie Fracture with Anthony Hopkins and the starring actor from Drive, the movie Drive, I believe, or
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling. So definitely check that out, and hopefully we'll give you a nice discussion. So as we know, next week we'll be talking some Anhedenia, and still working on the anthology. So I'm not sure exactly when that's going to get done, but I hope to have it done soon. But in any case, everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
everyone.
Don't forget to wear that beekeeper hat when you're doing the podcast, Dave.
Yeah.
Definitely.